G'day, Shaun here. I want to talk to you about flathead fishing and one of the combos I like to use for it. So this would be the heavier combo that I'd like to use. This is basically your standard snapper rod. It's 7 foot long, it's about 5 to 10 kilo line rating. I think I've got about 20 pound here on the reel. Cast weight 10 to 30 grams. That's probably the most important part about this rod here is the cast weight. The cast weights that you're looking at, if you're unrigging a 200mm soft plastic, if you are running a 1/4 ounce on the front of 150mm, and if you're using jerk baits, you're looking at around 30 grams, depending on the size. So this Samaki Reddick is it's either 35 or 38 grams, and this thing can work the Reddick just really well. It's yeah, I'm a big fan of the way that I can cast this bait, but look, we'll probably speak a little bit more about the rod itself and what other baits I can throw with it later. So the rod, TD Black, no surprise. I'm just a huge fan of the TD Blacks for the price point. There's a lot of technology jammed in here, and it's light, it's responsive, it's strong, and it can throw light and relatively heavy lures. Don't get me wrong, there's probably something much better on the market, but I guess my blood's not that rich, so still sort of trying to combat the old making sure you get value for money when you're fishing. But at the same time, I do a lot of fishing, so I don't mind spending what I think is a bit of money on gear. So speaking of, on this is a 20 TD Black, so 20 series, humphead, and the 5 to 10. And I've put a 4000 Daiwa MQ. Yeah, it's been tough to shell out money for the MQ. It's an expensive reel. It's more expensive than stuff I've had previously, but I tell you what, the smoothness, the fact that it's mag sealed, the weight, it's everything about it. I'm just I'm a massive fan of the Daiwa Black series in the reels and the rods. So let me go through why this is so good for flathead. First of all, the weights. The previous gear that I've been sort of reviewing, the bait cast up to 28 grams, so real close. But you get more distance on the spin cast. So different application for that bait cast. You still throw those heavier baits and you're stopping them right near structure, which you can't do with this. But what we can do with this is throw those heavier lures much further. You can cover a lot more ground. So if you are fishing like a big sandy and weedy bay, this is your go-to. Spin gear is great for if you're not exactly sure where the fish are going to be and you just need to cover ground to find out. And even guys and girls who know systems like the back of their hand, and they know where flatty are, and the good ones are that, there's still a little bit of discovery to be had. Flathead go to similar spots, and some flathead go to the same spot over and over again. But things do change, and sometimes we don't always understand why. So the importance of covering ground is still relevant, even from the most novice to the most advanced anglers. I'm definitely not the most advanced, so disclaimer. But I'm definitely catching bigger fish than I have in the past, and that's just purely because I'm using bigger baits. This is a 150mm Samaki Reddick in the shallow, and I've been using 150mm XL shad in the Pro Lure, and I've also been using 150mm, the Ultra Gar. Been using the 120mm in the clone prawn. Now, when I first saw those big clone prawns, I thought, that's for the north. That's for, I don't know, coral trout or barramundi or jacks or something. But make no mistake, the flatties don't mind a big clone prawn. But look, moving on, what I'm trying to say is that this rod, first and foremost, when it comes to the weight cast, the amount of weight you can cast on this one, it gives you so many options for those bigger baits. Another thing too, you'll notice on this one here, this Reddick, these hooks, they're not super thick gauge, they're not Murray cod grade or barra grade. Maybe they are barra grade, we don't go barra fishing. But they're a thicker grade wire than sort of your standard flatty hook. Same with your jig heads. If you're fishing a 150 mil, you're looking at a 6.0 hook, maybe a 7.0 hook. I like to have a lot of hook exposure when I'm fishing for flatty. The problem is, if you've got a jig head with a 5.0, 6.0, 7.0, the wire, it's a thicker gauge wire. That means if you're fishing your standard 2 to 6, 3 to 5 kilo stick, it's going to be pretty hard to jam the hooks home into that fish. You're going to have to load up proper. So you're going to have to be really good with anticipating a bite and then quick to react by setting a strong hook set. With a 2 to 6 kilo stick on a thicker wire gauge hook, that's tough. You might not get the strike, the hook set on the strike quick enough. There are just too many variables for me. So this is where the 5 to 10 kilo comes into play. It's definitely a thicker rod. Like, you do notice the thickness. Like 5 to kilo and 2 to 6, they are very, very different when it comes to flathead fishing. But again, this has set thick gauge hooks in flatty mouths many times. It'll continue to do so. I can fish bigger baits with those bigger gauge hooks. Don't get me wrong, you can change the hooks on this. I don't necessarily want to mess with the established buoyancy that this lure has for these hooks. I could throw some thick hooks on it and it might sink. I could throw some thin hooks on it and it'll float too quickly. Although I will say, funnily enough, for me, this Samaki floats too quick. But maybe that's a video for another day. I really love this rod here. It's caught a few big fish. And again, I'm no flathead master. Trying to be. Biggest one, I think this has got a 77. And plenty of power left in the butt of the rod. There was plenty of flex up top, so I could keep the hook in. I was able to drive the hook into that fish's mouth, and it was a really good hook set. And I was from the first time I actually used this for flathead, I landed a solid fish. That was that 77, and I was super happy with the way it performed. I've just had absolutely no hesitancy to use this on so many other different kinds of baits. The jerk baiting scenario, this one here, it is a little bit, I will say, a little bit too heavy for the cast weight rating. So the cast weight rating on this one up to 30. This is about a 35 or a 38 gram, the 150 Reddick. If you were looking at the 120, that's right within your 30 gram range. Or I think it's right on 30 gram, maybe 32. But, typical large jerk baits, this is going to do it. This is going to be good enough. And again, unlike your bait caster, you're not having to worry about casting a heavy lure and having overrun, and also worrying about, am I going to snap the tip on this if I really try and whip it? So yes, it's a little bit heavier than what this rod requires, but as long as you're it's within range, it's pretty close. I've never had any tip snap on any of my rods before, and maybe that's because I'm careful, but at the same time I don't like to go stupidly heavy because I want to keep things reasonable. Haven't had any issues, and fingers crossed, touch wood, there'd be no tip snap because I absolutely love these TD Black rods. But yeah, look, the drag pressure on this, I can't actually recall. I'm sure it's insane given the fact that the 2,500 pumps out about 10 kilo drag pressure. It's a little bit silly. Let me just have a look here. I can't find it on the spool, unfortunately. But these things crank out more drag pressure than what you need. So it's going to do the job for you, especially when you've got your 20-pound line. And I think I've got about, that one might even be sort of 20-pound leader. You can always downsize the leader, but yeah, look, it hasn't been a problem in terms of getting bites for me so far. So yeah, look, that's my summary of this rod here for flathead fishing. It's also a fantastic rod for throwing out metal casting lures into the surf for salmon and tailor. And one thing I want to say is, look, I'm not a big beach fisher, but you don't have to have a 9-foot rod to go beach fishing. I've taken this rod so many times for salmon and tailor, even if it's off the rocks. One thing to note when it comes to the rocks, your longer rod does help you get over that front rock ledge if it's a bit dicey and that front ledge gets a lot of wash. So I will say that longer rod is better, but the application for this is really varied. That 5 to 10 gives you a lot of flexibility. Cool. All right. That one's been a bit of a longer video than I thought, but yeah, that's my review on the 5 to 10 kilo TD Black in the 20 series, the Humphead. Fantastic rod as an all-rounder for the heavier stuff. But yeah, I highly recommend you guys go and grab 150 mil XL shad and throw a quarter ounce head on it and just slow roll. Just, you know, let's just cast these things out over the sandy edges, sandy and weedy bays, and yeah, see what kind of big flatty you can reel in. All right, thanks for watching. Cheers.